Brendan, you're on the clock. Who are you going with?
Yeah, I'm going to not even use a second. Anthony Edwards is my pick. He was the number 1 overall pick. As Ricky said, it was a bit of a surprise at the time. I thought Ricky's piece on him was very good at the time. I thought Jonathan Shark's piece on him the night of that draft was very, very good. And you get a lot of good stuff about them basically just trying to like prove themselves to everybody for why they took this wacky. I mean, it wasn't crazy. He was one of the top 3 picks, but he wasn't necessarily everybody's number 1. And yet he has proven himself to be, I think, to me, far and away, already the most productive player. That's kind of inarguable. But then I think also still maybe the highest ceiling player of anybody out here. I mean, just a 2-way star, somebody who I think is one of the future faces of the league and somebody who really is going to be able to be the number 1 on a championship team with what he's able to do when he really locks in defensively, which we've seen at times. His athleticism, his burst, his first step, the dunks we've already seen. If he can hone how he gets to his 3 and he's able to make, the pull up even more reliable, fit in with other star scorers, which he hasn't really been able to do because of injuries and everything else over the course of his career. We're going to be talking about Ant for a long time. Anyone else have thoughts on Anthony Edwards? Come on, guys.
So here's my. There's only one other guy to me that comes close to this, and it really wasn't a debate for me if I was gonna get the number 1 pick. Ant is to me like the kind of prototypical star of this class. Like he had a really kind of slow start to this year, but he's averaging like really good numbers again. He's scored every single year of his career. He's gotten a little bit better every year of his career. And it's like very telling that like on a team that already had a very high draft pick in Karl Anthony Towns, that just feels like his team, and that we've already decided that like every decision they make feels like it has to be about Ant. And like I don't, there's nothing about his profile in terms of his size, his 3-level ability, like that I feel really weird about. Like I don't have any doubts about it. We'll see like how good on defense he can get. We'll see kind of how good the playmaking gets. But as like a really high engine scorer who can kind of do everything on the floor, I don't really have any doubts about him as a guy. Like to me, he had to be number 1.
He's just an athletic freak. I mean, his speed to power blend, ability to go fast, go slow. Like, yeah, I remember doing the reporting on him, and I talked to his trainer when he was in high school, and he was telling me like, oh, this guy would have been the first pick in the NFL draft at like 3 different positions if you put him out there. And that's just like, he has athletic gifts that are elite amongst people who are elite. So I think that's the big thing with him. I think he's a really good shooter and has 3-point percentage is only going to continue to go up. His volume has obviously increased quite a bit over his first 3 years. The question to me is the playmaking. Just because it seems like truly the best players are able to blend scoring and playmaking and use the threat of their scoring to set up their teammates, use the threat of their playmaking to score themselves. That's why Caitlin Clark's so damn good, because she, can blend scoring and playmaking so well. So I want to see that from Edwards, but Edwards is awesome. He's exceeded the hype as a number 1 overall pick, I would say, and yeah, the future is so bright for him.
I'm curious to see what the Wolves decide to do with him and how they decide to build with him, like, and what kind of pivots they make. Like the Gobert thing, that we don't need to relitigate all that, but like that never felt like the perfect fit for me as far as the right big with him.
They need to figure out the other ball handler, I think. I mean, that's the thing to me is like they've telegraphed that they didn't want that to be Russell. They finally get off of him. It's just not going to be Conley by way of age. So what do they see as the best number 2? I mean, I do feel like it's somebody somewhat similar to Conley. There's not a lot of players like him. There's not a lot of players in this day and age that play like that anymore at the point guard spot. So I'm curious to see who his sort of number 1 is from a ball handling standpoint going forward, because I think that'll affect how he develops, and it'll affect, how that team obviously fares long term.
So let's say any top 5 player in the league out of this, but who's the ideal Anthony Edwards co-star? And you could say I'm gonna say you can't say Jason Tatum, but you can say Jaylen Brown, something like that, where we're not gonna say the top 5 players in the league or top 5 MVP candidates, but who do you guys think would be the ideal Ant-Man co-star?
If we went as a guard, I think Darius Garland would make a ton of sense. Just a guy that is like willing to kind of play off the ball. I think like Halliburton would make sense as well. Just guys that are really crafty off the ball. Big, I find a little bit more challenging to figure out. I think like Jaren Jackson Jr. to me would probably make a lot of sense if you're going to go big. Guy who can stretch, guy who can do a little bit with the ball in his hands, a guy that can really absorb some of the defensive stuff. So to me, I would probably go that direction. It's like J or like a Garland Halliburton kind of guard.
I think Triple J has to be off limits with these conversations because you could say him just like Tatum. You could say like a lot of those guys for everything. I think you're totally right,
sure.
Chris. Garland came to mind for me. I actually also thought of Drew Holiday, just somebody that brings enough of the ball handling. Marcus Smart, a player sort of like a 3-and-D ball handling point guard, number one, versatile defender. Not that I think Ant needs to be protected, but I also just think the amount that he can do offensively, you don't want him to have to also be your best defender, so I think it'd be nice to have that. I think offensively, Towns is a pretty nice fit with Ant. Defensively, there's obviously always going to be questions with Towns, but those would be my answers. I mean, I think it's pretty simple. As long as you're putting spacing around him and, some level of defense, I think he's going to be pretty solid.